They finally fixed the tripod screw. Sony just launched the ZV-1F point-and-shoot camera, their cheaper counterpart to the ZV-1. Let's take a look at a few of the key differences between the cameras so you can see which one is the best for you. Hi, I'm Aaron Parecki. Just to get this out of the way, Sony is not sponsoring this video. I actually bought both of these cameras myself. I've had the ZV-1 for a year or two now, and the ZV-1F just came out and I was so curious about it that I had to buy it just to try it out. I really like tiny cameras. I like having a small amount of gear to bring with me when I travel. Plus, I'm always looking for the best gear to recommend to you for using for your live streams. So with that out of the way, let's dive into the main differences between these cameras. The ZV-1 is a great camera, but one of the most annoying things about it is that the tripod screw blocks access to the battery flap. As soon as you put this on any kind of tripod, you can no longer open the battery door. That means you can't change the battery, you can't access the SD card, and you can't use a DC coupler to continuously power it with a USB port. The good news is that on the ZV-1F, they have now moved the tripod screw over to the side, so it is nowhere near the battery door anymore. The only thing that they didn't quite get right on the ZV-1F is that there's still no notch for the little cord for a DC coupler to hang out of. I haven't had much luck powering the ZV-1 over USB continuously. It usually just ends up overheating, or it gets confused that the battery is draining. I know some people have had no problems with it, but personally, it's just never been reliable for me. So instead, I have a DC coupler that plugs into the actual battery slot, and you plug that into a USB port, and that's been working great for me. I don't yet know if the ZV-1F has fixed that problem with the USB port. I'm hoping they did, and there's a good chance they did because one of the differences is that the ZV-1F is actually a USB-C port now. Once I've had a chance to spend more time with this camera, I will be sure to let you know. The solution with the ZV-1 is you can get a little extension plate, which means you can actually attach a tripod to that, and that means you can actually leave the battery door open to both either change the battery or to be able to actually put in the DC coupler. The great news is on the ZV-1F, you no longer have to worry about adding an additional accessory. You can just connect a tripod directly to the camera and the battery is still accessible. The next biggest difference is the lens. The lens of the ZV-1 has an optical zoom. It'll actually extend out and contract in as you're zooming. The lens of the ZV-1F is fixed. Now, optical zoom is great. It's going to give you much better picture quality when you're zooming in as opposed to doing digital zoom from a single fixed focal length. But one of the other differences about the lenses is that the ZV-1, with its extendable lens, it actually has a built-in lens flap that closes when you turn it off. The ZV-1F, however, has this extra little lens cap that you have to take off when you want to use the camera. I just know I'm going to lose this at some point because it does not come attached. The ZV-1 lens has an equivalent 35mm focal length of 24 to 70mm. That's decently wide on the wide end, and it can zoom in quite a lot. The ZV-1F, however, is fixed at 20mm, so it's a wider field of view than the ZV-1. This is good for vlogging because if you are holding the camera out at arm's length, the field of view is reasonably wide and you don't need an extra stick to push out even farther. One of the other differences related to the lens is actually how quickly the camera turns on and turns off. I've actually been kind of annoyed at how long it takes the ZV-1 to start up. When you press the power button, the lens has to first extend, and then you can actually watch the screen as various menu items slowly load. It ends up taking about 5 or 6 seconds or so before it's actually ready to use. I have noticed that because there is no extendable zoom lens, the ZV-1F actually starts up much faster, and the ZV-1F shuts down faster as well. With the ZV-1, you again have to wait for the lens to retract before it'll turn off. The last biggest difference is probably the menu system. The menu system of the ZV-1F is the new Sony camera menu system, completely redesigned, and it works totally differently. I'm actually not sure if I like it better or worse yet. I think I need more time to play around with it before I actually have a strong opinion about it, but it is very noticeably different, so get used to a big change there. Plus, another difference with the menu is that on the ZV-1F, you can actually touch the screen to interact with the menu options. I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but on the ZV-1, you have to use the scroll wheel to navigate between the different menu options. On the 1F, you can actually tap things to actually click them. It's just nice. There's a couple other minor details that are worth pointing out as well. The ZV-1F does not have a built-in ND filter. The ZV-1 does, which is pretty cool because it lets you get a slower shutter speed even when there's a lot of light. You don't get a built-in ND filter on the ZV-1F, so if you do want one, you'll have to screw it onto the lens manually. Another difference is still photos. The ZV-1F does not shoot raw still photos. It's a vlogging camera, it's for video. It's probably not a big deal to you, but if you are planning on doing actual photography with it, then you may want to go with the ZV-1 instead, which does support RAW photos. Another minor difference is stabilization modes. The ZV-1 has 3 stabilization modes. You can disable it completely, there's what they call standard, and then there's active. The 1F only has off or the active mode. In the active mode, it's going to crop in quite a lot, and that lets it do stabilization electronically. And it's very good stabilization, but you don't get that middle ground with the ZV-1F. So which of these is better? Well, as always, it depends. Depends on what you're doing with it. I do think they made a couple of good decisions about the ZV-1F to make it cheaper and more affordable for using for vlogging and as a live stream camera. Personally, I think the ZV-1F is going to be a better option if you're going to be using it for live streams. That means put it in a fixed position, continuous power, but you want good autofocus and you want it to be portable. It's a couple $100 cheaper than the ZV-1, but it still has a lot of really good features in it. Plus, most of the features that you get in the ZV-1 that are not in the 1F are actually not going to help you with live streaming anyway. The 3 main things I look at when I'm looking for a good camera for live streaming: can it be powered continuously, does it have clean HDMI out, and does it have decent enough autofocus? The most noticeable difference between the two is probably the zoom lens. If you are going to want optical zoom, you're going to want to do the ZV-1. The ZV-1F is a fixed 20mm equivalent lens. But overall, I'm genuinely excited about the ZV-1F. It's great to see another camera at the $500 price point. There actually aren't that many good cameras at $500. It goes from like a couple $100s for a webcam to around $700 for the cheapest DSLR or mirrorless or point and shoot. So I think this camera strikes a good middle ground. It's a good set of features for live streaming, and it's a great price point as well. My other recommendations around this range would be the Lumix G100 or G7, but those are anywhere from $600 to $700, $800-ish. And of course the Sony ZV-E10, but that's like $800 new as well. So it's great to get a camera around the $500 price point to use for your live streams. This camera fits perfectly on top of the PK1 YoloBox cage. It's a great camera to use with the YoloBox. Just grab a short HDMI cable to go from the camera to the YoloBox, and the cage makes it come together really nicely in this kit. You can find links to the PK1 Cage down below or at pk1.tv. And of course, if you are thinking about buying this camera, please do consider using my affiliate links. That is down below as well. That is a great way to help support this channel at no additional cost to you. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions about this camera that I might be able to answer on one of my weekly live streams. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.